The federal government is going after online sexual predators and cracking down on how they share data and where they hide it. The federal government announced today it is committing more than $22 million over 3 years to tackle the issue. $15 million going towards enhancing the capacity of Internet child exploitation units in local police forces. Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale says the funding will also focus on 4 pillars of the national strategy on sexual exploitation of children. Those are raising awareness, reducing the stigma of reporting, increasing the ability to prosecute offenders, and working together with online companies to ensure child pornography is not hosted on their platforms.
Governments, through the Five Eyes or the G7 or the United Nations or the other fora that deal with this, have to constantly reinforce the message with the companies that none of us are going to slacken our pace here. Dealing with these horrible threats to children and the abuse of children is something where we can never relax, because technology will never relax.
After being sexually exploited by an online predator, BC teen Amanda Todd took her own life in 2012. She was only 15 years old at the time. Todd posted this black and white video on YouTube before her death. In the video, she held up these handwritten pages describing how one incident with an online stalker led to cyberbullying. Her story sparked a worldwide conversation about cyber safety and online sexual exploitation. Joining me now is Amanda's mother, Carol Todd. After losing her daughter, Carol established the nonprofit organization, the Amanda Todd Legacy Society. It helps youth and their families to access resources to ensure internet safety. Carol, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I know it can't be easy to talk about this even now.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. What do you think of the government's plan?
I think it's wonderful that the government has injected more money into online exploitation and safety for children. I know that money has come in previous years, and the Canadian Centre for Child Protection has been a part of that and used it wisely in terms of fighting child exploitation online and creating more safety measures and educational resources.
What do you think is the key?
What do I think is the key? That's a very big question, because I've always said from day one that we need to get the technology companies involved, we need to get the telecommunications companies involved, we need to provide more education and awareness and teaching to our adults, to our parents, to our law enforcement officers, to organizations, and we need to talk to our kids. And we don't just need to talk to our kids once or twice. It needs to be an ongoing conversation about what the internet's all about, what can happen, and I'm a firm believer that technology is for the good. That's why it was created, for us to communicate. Unfortunately, some of the communication has gone more negative into the dark side, but we have to be able to talk about it. And with the openness of talking about it, we'll get more people to come forward, and hopefully more children to come forward, and hopefully prevent the exploitation.
Yeah, let's break that down, because there's the police piece, there's the tech company piece, and then there's also the family piece and,
yes,
and the communication, which you talk about a lot. Let's start with the police piece. Having local police forces have access to these kinds of educational tools. What do they need to know? How will that help, in your opinion?
They need to know the definition of exploitation, and I know that there's the ICE units out there with the RCMP, but there's a broader scale, which I feel, in my opinion, that local police, general officers, they need to know what exploitation is, and because the first line of an individual, whether it be a parent or a child reporting, will probably be to their local police services, right? And so when they get to that window, they have to have the other person behind that window understanding what it is that's being reported, so that they don't get turned away and frustrated.
What happened to you in your case?
Well, back in December 2010, an image was posted of Amanda, and someone, a friend of hers, reported it to a parent, who then reported it to the police, and the police arrived at my doorstep for a safety check. And then we met with the RCMP. We talked about what needed to be done, and back then, like this was January of 2011, right?
Right.
The easiest thing was to get off the internet, or the easiest words of advice were to get off the internet.
They were telling you needed to get off the internet.
They needed Amanda to get off the internet. And we did get her off the internet. But what we didn't know was that the predator had 100 different aliases. And so he had already infiltrated her social media. And when we let her back on the internet, that person knew. And so it all started over again. And I re-reported, and it was, take her off the internet, shut down her social media. We know now that that doesn't work, because kids are very connected to the internet, right?
Right.
And to get them off and to take them off, they'll go find it. They'll find another source. But with exploitation also, we need to have more education about what is right and what is wrong.
Right. Okay. So the change being here was that police would know that that's not the answer, and they would be trained to do something else instead?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, to investigate.
What about to investigate. The tech companies, what responsibility do you think they have? We just heard Ralph Goodale muse about the possibility of, I don't know if he was talking about fines or making it more challenging for tech companies to take too little responsibility for what's happening.
I think what he was alluding to was financial restitution, possibly for victims of exploitation online. What that would look like, I don't know. How that would come about would be a difficult one in my thinking. I would like to see restitution come to the victims at either the federal level or the provincial level within their own country or their own province. Because I was in Detroit a couple months ago at a sentencing hearing of another fellow who was an online predator, and I was talking to some of the victims that would have been Amanda would have been their age, right? So 21, 22, 23, and they were victimized when they were 13, 14, 15, same time frame as my daughter, and some of them had actually even talked to her online, the girls. And I listened to the heartbreaking stories about the trauma, the PTSD, what they went through and what they're still going through. I talked to a mom that said that there's no money for counseling or therapy, and they're just trying to do it on their own at home, right? And so there needs to be a pool of money, I think, where victims can access and apply through a government agency, right?
A central place,
like that.
Right?
A central place.
Because this speaks to what you were talking about, the conversation that parents and children should have, but I think we can all identify with young girls who may have made a mistake online, an embarrassing one, and how do they get themselves out of that and admit, tell somebody what they've done in order to save themselves from a predator? I mean, they're caught in their minds a catch-22 situation.
There's two things that the young people fear, and they fear the threats that the online predator is telling to them, that if they tell and they report, that their family members will be hurt, they'll be hurt, I'll come find you, I have your information, I have your address. Right? And so that puts fear into them. The other part about young people not reporting is the shaming that they may get from their peers, which happened with Amanda, right? And that shaming and embarrassment creates the embarrassment that creates the cyber abusive words that are thrown at them to make them feel worse. And so it's a catch-22. So there's many, many areas that continue to need work on. And yeah, you make a mistake, right? Poor judgment. And so we have to talk about how to react with those.
All right. Well, Carol Todd, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us some deep insight into what these measures actually mean. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Carol Todd is the founder of the Amanda Todd Legacy Society.